Hi, my name is Jeff Burns, and welcome to my blog, Pathways to Peace, Following Jesus on the Road Less Traveled. This blog is an attempt to capture my journey as a peacemaker and follower of Jesus Christ over the last 10 years. Over the past 10 years, I have worked full-time in peacemaking, especially in bringing Muslims and Christians together in this country and several other countries around the world. My goal has been to help them find commonality, to work for reconciliation, to become friends, and to work for the common good of their communities. And one of the big commonalities that I have found between Muslims and Christians is that we all claim to love Jesus. And he has become a bridge for the reconciliation work that I do. Now, also in this blog, I'm going to be focusing on racial reconciliation. I think most of us can acknowledge that the racial divide in this country is getting worse, and also it's getting worse in the world. We're seeing the rise of nationalism and tribalism, and if there's ever a time we need to find a pathway to peace, it's now. So I feel like that part of what I'm called to do in the world is to make a difference in this somehow, and to write about this and blog about this and just tell you my journey and my experiences and the wonderful things that we have seen happen. In a time when violence and bloodshed seem to be the default position of many people, not only on a political level, but also on a religious and theological level, I hope that you will see and experience in my blog what Stephen Covey called the third alternative to peace. Stephen Covey said we have three alternatives in dealing with conflict in this world. He said the first alternative is that we have to stop looking at everything through our own lens. That's where we have to begin. So the first thing is, I have to see myself. I come from a tribe. I may be a part of a political party. I may be part of a religious tradition. I'm part of a family. I'm part of a culture. And as a result, often, because I'm a part of that culture and have the values and things like that make up that culture, often I can look at the world, through very prejudiced eyes. So the goal of the first alternative is I need to see myself. Am I prejudiced? How am I seeing the world? Am I really seeing the world clearly as it is? Then once I begin to step back from my tribe, my religious affiliation, unfortunately sometimes, and my political party and all that, not that those things aren't important and not that you're giving them up, but just to step back, then I need to see you. And if you're a Muslim, I need to look at you and say, hey, what does it mean to be a Muslim? Why are you a Muslim? How do you see the world? What is your family life like? What are your fears? What are your values? What are the things that make you unique? And I need to hear your story, and I need to understand you. So once I see myself, and once I see you, I begin to reach out to you, and you begin to reach out to me, and we become friends. And once we become friends, we can create a third alternative, a synergy. We synergize together, and we create an alternative that rises above our own culture and background and political preferences and ideologies, and we can work together to create a better world. Now, I believe that Jesus came to show all people this third alternative. He was doing this even before Covey was doing it. Can you believe that? And I call the third alternative of Jesus the pathway to peace. Now, it's interesting. A lot of people in this world will say, how could anybody hate Jesus? Now, it's possible that there might be people in this world that hate Jesus. Maybe Stalin, Mussolini, Hitler, Mao. They probably didn't like the ideology of Jesus. So I can appreciate that to some level. But most people don't hate Jesus. Most people have an affection and a respect for Jesus, at least as a philosopher and moral leader. I believe he was much more than that. Absolutely, I do. But at least at that level, most people will say, yeah, Jesus was an amazing and extraordinary person. So Jesus came to show us a better way of being human. He came to show us a pathway to peace, a third alternative. And it's interesting, you'll find this third alternative even in Hinduism and Buddhism and Islam. If you listen and you look for it, you can find it very carefully. It's there. And Jesus said, he said you should love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul and all your strength, and love your neighbor as much as you love yourself, and treat other people the way you wanted to be treated. And if you have enemies, the only way you're going to get with them is make them your friends. He said, love your enemies. Do good to them. Pray for them. Don't be afraid of them. Love them, and as much as possible, try to be at peace with all people. This was the third alternative and the pathway of peace of Jesus. And he said all the law and all the prophets and all the writings of the Bible that so many people claim to love could be summed up in these things. Love God, love neighbor, treat other people the way you want to be treated, and love your enemies. I mean, that's in the book, folks. He said it. I didn't make it up. So he said these are the most important things, and unfortunately churches aren't majoring these things. We're majoring in the minors and not even minoring in the majors. We've gotten so clouded and messed up we don't even understand what the gospel is anymore. But here's the heart and core of it, and it's amazing. And Jesus said we're to go make disciples and train people to live in this wonderful, beautiful way of loving God, loving other neighbor, and treating other people the way we want to be treated. Now, how did I come into this peace path? In the next clip I have, I go into a story how God used a Muslim child. I hated Muslims, and how God used a Muslim child to change my life. But once I came on to this path, there was some very simple practices I began to do, and I began to train other people to do these things, Muslims, Christians, and we actually had some situation where the Jewish community got involved. It was so exciting to see Muslims, Christians, and Jews coming together. And here's how we began to live out this path. First of all, the first practice, I call it core practice, was we became good friends. We had no agenda but love. That was it. Become friends. That seems so simple, but it is. Become friends. Love your neighbor. Become friends. 2, eat together. Get in each other's homes. Eat together. Spend time together. And I used to tell my Muslim friends, you know, guys, dialogue is great, but until we are eating in each other's homes and our children are becoming friends, all we're doing is having a nice talk. Dialogue has to go outside the mosque, the church, and the synagogue, and it has to get into the homes where we do life together and we're being together, we're fishing together. If you like to hunt, you're hunting together, you're gardening, whatever it is. We have to eat together and become friends. That's when the world begins to change. Then we explore faith together. There's no point in pretending that we're not different. We have our differences. You know, and so as we eat together and we become friends, we can sit down and say, what is it? Who is Muhammad? What is he about? Who is Jesus? I mean, what do we have in common? What are our differences? And we begin to ask each other questions as friends, not as adversaries, not as polemics, not trying to tear down or destroy or even convert, but to understand. And it's amazing once we begin to understand each other, the power that's in that. The power that's in that. And so we have so many misunderstandings about each other. We have Muslims teaching Christianity, and Christianity is teaching Islam. We should be learning from each other. We really should. I don't know why we do that. Then the fourth practice that we had was we would work for the common good together. In our communities, we would work for the common good together. We would begin to maybe build a habitat home or community gardens or work at the Ronald McDonald House. We'd find a project we would do together, and we did this in different places across the country and other countries, and the fruit of this was awesome. It was just a wonderful experience. And I'm convinced that around the world right now, there are Muslims and Christians and Jews and Buddhists and Hindus who are pretty damn tired. They're tired of the religious BS. They're tired of the political BS. They're tired of the religious fighting and killing and they're exhausted. And they're saying, if this is what Islam is about and Christianity is about, and this is what we're about, let's just close the mosques, the church, the synagogues, and go home. If it's not about loving God, loving neighbor, treating other people, if it's not about making the better world for our children and our grandchildren, let's just go home and be atheists. We'd be better off to be atheists. But there are people that are looking for this third path, this pathway to peace. And I believe it's time now that we begin to find each other. You know, some of my Christian friends, and I come from a conservative, evangelical background. Please don't hold that against me. That's my heritage, my background. It's been beautiful. It's been wonderful in many ways. At times it's been difficult. If you're a Muslim, Christian, or Jew, I'm sure you can find difficulties in your community. And often when you start walking down the pathway of peace, you can find that sometimes the people of your own community are unfortunately your biggest critics. But you know, some of my Christian friends have said to me over the years, well, if Muslims are serious about peace, why aren't they speaking out against violence? Why aren't they crying out against all the stuff that's going on in the world? Well, you know, Muslims have been speaking out against violence for the last 10 years almost. In 2007, in Jordan, there was 138 Muslim scholars who got together, top Muslim officials and political leaders from all around the world, muftis, imams. They got together and said, you know, we've read the Bible, we've read the Quran, and we've come to the conclusion that we agree upon three things with Christians. There is one God, and we should love God with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. And we agree with you, Christians, on this. And we're willing to build a bridge with you and begin a journey on these three things of dialogue and friendship. And if we don't build on something good like this, our children and our grandchildren are going to pay for our ignorance and our lack of vision and our lack of commitments to the deep core things of our faith, which are these three things. And some Christians didn't like it. But guys, I got to tell you, these three things the Muslims are saying we should agree upon are the three things that Jesus said. There's one God. We should love God with all of our heart and love our neighbor as ourselves. So Muslims are in this situation, they're following Jesus. They're agreeing with Jesus. So why can't we agree together and walk this out? Martin Luther King embraced this idea of a third alternative or a peace path. He said that the theology of Jesus was central to the human rights movements. He said Jesus gave us the values and principles. Mahatma Gandhi gave us the tactics of nonviolence to live out those principles. And Martin Luther King, and I love him, he's my hero. He really is. He and Mandela. Martin Luther King said he believed in this idea called the beloved community. And when Martin Luther King when he was moving and the civil rights movement was gaining momentum, which the civil rights movement was the greatest movement in the 20th century, it really was, of changing people's lives. There were some African Americans that said we don't want white people marching with us, demonstrating with us. This has got to be a black power movement. And Martin Luther King said no. The goal of this movement is not to put black people on top, to get revenge, or to put white people on the bottom. The goal is a beloved community where the oppressed and the oppressor become friends. And through our nonviolent resistance, we want to convict our white oppressors and so that they will repent before God and we can be reconciled. That's the third alternative. Martin Luther King lived this out. Nelson Mandela lived out this third alternative, this pathway to peace. When he got out of prison after 29 years of being imprisoned by the apartheid government put him in prison, when he came out of prison, he said, I knew if I didn't forgive my enemies that put me here, I would be in a prison in my heart for the rest of my life. He forgave them. And he started this thing called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And in that, this is phenomenal. It was restorative justice, not punitive justice. In this, he said all the people who've committed crimes against black people and tribes that have committed crimes against others, if you'll come forward and confess your crimes publicly to the families and people you hurt, you'll be forgiven. He wasn't about revenge. You know what? It worked. He created a third alternative, a pathway to peace. They were following Jesus, the principles of Jesus in this thing. Now, I'm going to wrap this thing up, okay? So here's what my blog is about. I think you've got a picture of that. My blog is going to have several elements. One, I'm going to have guest bloggers every week who are going to be talking about this third alternative. Brian McLaren, Carl Medeiros, Mark Soljander, Rick Love, many, many more. I'm hoping to get James Cone. James Cone is an African theologian, and many. I want to have Native Americans. I want to have African Americans. I want to have women, men. I want to have everyone on this blog each week. Now, you're not going to agree with everyone. I may not agree with everyone, but these are people who are trying to live out this third alternative, and this blog is going to capture that. It's going to be different. It's going to be a blog for thinkers and activists. I'm excited about this, and people who love the way of Jesus. And it's also going to be a platform for my book. So each week I'll be writing little things about my book. Hopefully my book will be coming out in 2017. And this book, it reflects my journey as a Southern pastor and my attempt to follow Jesus and lead churches that often basically hated African Americans. And I found out later that some of my leadership in one church had been in the Ku Klux Klan, and it was my journey, that struggle. They're trying to follow the third path, the third alternative, and the pathway to peace. In Southern congregations often, and not all Southern congregations are this way. It's not what I'm saying. But to follow, to kind of flesh that out and my story and what that looks like and the struggle I had to find that third alternative and the great work of God that He did in my life and many of the people that were around me. So that'll be. And also I'll be weekly looking at current events, what's trending. And so this will be a very active, interactive blog. We'll be looking at many things from peacemaking, justice, reconciliation, the earth, whatever. It's going to be covering poverty. It's going to be covering a lot of things. Now, if you want to sign up for my blog, once this is done, when this long video clip is done, you can go over to the sign up section for my newsletter. If you do that, then every week, every time I post something, it'll come automatically to your mailbox. You can unsubscribe at any time. So The next link you're going to see here in a few moments is how I, as an evangelical pastor, conservative Christian, hated Muslims, and how God brought a Muslim child in my life to completely turn my heart around. So I hope you enjoy the clip, and God bless you, and thank you for your time.